Hello, everyone, and welcome to our HEC Paris webinar. So thank you for being connected with us today for our webinar on the future trends and new entrepreneurial projects, why social entrepreneurship knowledge is important to everyone, presented by our well-known Professor Florian Host, whose class Social Entrepreneurship and Change Making is part of the fundamental courses of our Master in Innovation and Entrepreneurship and certificates. So Florian is speaking from Berlin. So good morning, Florian. How are you doing today?
Very good. How are you? I'm excited.
Me too. So my name is Suzanne Mather, and I'm a program advisor for our Master in Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and I am speaking from Paris. So I'm assisted by our tech boy, Andrea, that you cannot see. And thanks to him, we are both visible in Paris and in Berlin to you, all viewers around the planet. So most welcome for this webinar. So to give you a few points during this webinar, we'll be covering the following topics. First, I will share with you a few facts and figures about our business school HEC and our MSc. And next will be the part that you're all waiting for, Florian's presentation and interaction with you viewers. At any time, you can type your questions and we'll be making a few breaks so that Florian can cover your questions. And after Florian's presentation, I will conclude in a few words on how you can apply to our master and maybe how you can get a taste for free for this master. So please stay connected till the end. Okay, so let's start up with the facts and figures about our business school HEC Paris, which is ranked by the Financial Times as the second business school in Europe. It was founded in 1881, and we are known as the first entrepreneurship school in France, especially due to our very close link and partnerships with Station F, which is the world's largest incubator, which is in Paris. We are also very well known for our powerful network, 57,000 alumni, politicians, and all kinds of CEO industrialists, as you can see on this slide, a few famous examples. We have 96 nationalities on the campus. We are known as the second most powerful business school alumni network. And of course, if you do join our Master in Innovation and Entrepreneurship, once you are awarded with our Master, you belong to this powerful network, which is a great tool when you want to connect with and have international connections or start or develop an activity. So our master in a few lines, it is 100% online and in English and is hosted by our partner, well-known platform Coursera. Our master lasts 18 months. There are 20 courses. The first 10 courses are pre-recorded courses, which are the fundamental courses. They last 6 months for the master, and they are the same courses as you can find in the certificate. And the next 10 courses of our master last during 12 months, and you work on a real case in teamwork during those 10 different courses in live sessions, of course. We have intakes every 6 months. The next one is December 2nd, so there are still seats available for our master, and you still have lots of time to finish your application if you wish to start it or you're in process. And the following intake will be in June 2020. So as I was telling you, the very important part of our master are those 12 months of project-based courses. You will work on a real case, will be pitched by yourself. Maybe you have an idea of a project that you would like to start or that is just started, but you don't dare go forward with it. So you can pitch your project, and if you are selected by your team members, you will be working from scratch of this idea of a project or a startup or a new product throughout those 10 courses during those 12 months with the interaction and the input of your team members. Teams are mostly around 4 or 5 team members on a project. You are guided during all those courses, of course, by entrepreneurs, experienced coaches, our professors like Florian, and you will be also evaluated by business angels at the end of the course, which can be quite interesting if you're looking for investors. So that is it for me. Now it's time for you, my viewers, to, well, tell us why are you here? It's time for your homework. So here we have this little poll that's going to appear in a few secs. And if you could answer the questions, why are you here looking at us? Are you just curious? Or maybe you want to start an activity or a company, or maybe you are considering our master. So hopefully you are answering, and I do see quite a few people are answering, so that's great. I will leave you still a few seconds because we are really curious to know, why are you here? We do have 20% of people who are just curious, but we have quite a few people who are considering to apply for our HEC Paris Master. So that's wonderful. Okay, well, I think now that's it for my poll. And now we are getting to the great part, which is Florian's presentation, which is going to start. So Florian, now it's your turn turn to take the mic and to tell us more about your project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suzanne. So we go from Paris to Berlin. Hello, everyone. Super delighted to talk to you about future trends and new entrepreneurial heroes, and also why I believe that what social entrepreneurs do and know is important for everyone who wants to be a business leader. As Suzanne said, you're very welcome to ask questions in the chat. We will have different moments during the presentation where I will interact with you, which is, for me, the best part of this webinar, and also the best part of the Masters, when I can actually interact with you guys. Okay, I tried to go on the new slide. Okay, so to briefly introduce myself, I'm Florian, and I'm professor at HEC since 2011. And I guess important for the topic that I talk about is I created the Masters in Sustainability and Social Innovation at HEC, which I directed for 2 years. And I moved to Berlin in 2017, where I took over new responsibilities I was directing a startup center, a tech startup center, and changed the strategy towards creating tech startups that are at the same time sustainable. And I'm also a consultant, coach, and business angel, so I do invest my private money in people like you if I think that the idea is great. All right, let me start. And again, the presentation has 3 different parts. I want to talk about future trends. I picked some which I believe are important. Then I want to talk about what I believe are social entrepreneurial heroes. And then I want to talk about why this is all important to every business leader. So I took a citation. I'm kind of a citation geek, and this is one of my favorite ones. Charles Darwin observed, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change." And I think that we can transfer this to the business world. Just to give you one example, you might have heard of Kodak, which was the famous photography company about 15, 20 years ago. And they perhaps had a chart like this, where they were looking at future trends. And they were trying to evaluate the relevance of those trends. And then digital photography arrived. And at a certain moment, there was a tipping point, and the red line went up. So digital photography became super relevant, and Kodak kind of ignored this. And the company almost disappeared because they did wrongly evaluate one of the future trends that was important. So what is important in the future for companies? Here are some trends that I picked. And you can make a guess. 80 to 90% of the world's population will do what in 2050? Well, they will live in big cities. Okay, at the moment, the percentage is much, much lower. And this means for anyone who's doing business, we perhaps have to concentrate selling our services and products in those geographic areas where almost everyone on this planet will live. But at the same time, this poses questions of how do we get the food to those places? How can we produce sustainably? What about pollution? What about new ways of mobility? So this fact that 80 to 90% of the population will live in big cities brings about all those questions that needs to be answered. The next trend is, and that's always funny to me because as a German, when we talk about Germany or other countries like Japan, we feel that the world is getting older and older. But in fact, it's not true. The average age in the world is pretty low. And I want to connect this to trend number 3, and this is what I'm really going to talk about today. It is the shift in values of the younger generation. So you might have heard about Greta Thunberg, you might have heard about the Fridays for Future movement, and you might have heard about studies like the Shell study, or there's a famous Harvard study on the values of the younger generation. People between 15 and 25 years today. And all those studies show that those people, they really care about the planet. And what is different to people who are older, who might also care about the planet, is that they adapt their behavior. They change their consumption, they choose their employer differently, and all that counts for them is, what do those companies do to the planet, and can I actually have a positive impact on the planet through my work? And companies, in my opinion, have to take this into account, because they need those people, those digital natives, as employees, but they also need to serve them as future clients. And the last trend I want to talk about that impacts companies is the framework of the sustainability goals, the so-called 17 SDGs. So those are 17 goals that 215 governments agreed on, and they are mainly about how can we as companies have a positive impact on society and on the planet, and they are formulated as different goals. So for example, we need to fight climate change. We need to improve life below water. For those of you who go fishing from time to time, there's so many fishes today that have plastic in their stomach, and so many fishes are dying and disappearing that in 5 to 10 years it might become a real issue to get fish out of the ocean. And then there's many other goals that every company can somehow relate to. And what is interesting is, when we had the Millennium Goals in 2000, nobody really cared about them as a business leader. Today, when you go to a conference and you see CEOs like Emmanuel Faber from Danone presenting, they use those SDGs and they integrate them into their strategic goals. All right, all those trends, they lead another famous person, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, the biggest investment company in the world, to say, to prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society. And this is very interesting for BlackRock, a company that was not known in the past to stress the social and the ecological impact that companies might have. And here they claim, well, if we invest, now we also take non-financial performance into account. Social and ecological issues, they are important to us. What does this mean for companies? And what can they learn from social entrepreneurs? I talk first about what I don't think is the future, and I call this the old corporate social responsibility model. So in the past, many companies, they made their revenues based on their business model. They sold cars, or they sold clothes, or whatever they sold. They made revenues and they deducted their expenses, and then they make a profit. And based on this profit, they decided how much they are going to spend on social and or ecological projects. And what you get at the end is, for example, a gas and oil industry company that builds schools in Western Africa. You get a car producer that perhaps works with differently abled children. But the CSR money that they spend is not related to the core business model of the firm. And I believe this model is getting completely obsolete in the future when we talk about this new generation that comes to the market that really wants companies with their business model to contribute to a better society and to have an ecological impact. So what I call this mindset is the triple impact mindset. My conviction is that everyone, every business actor, and especially leaders in the future, for every decision that they make, of course, they have to take into account how they make a profit. They have to have an economic impact. But at the same time, when they make this decision, they also should be sure about the social impact that this decision generates, and about the ecological impact that they're going to have. So in other words, and that's perhaps something that I try to teach in my course, when you create a business model, implement the effects on the people, implement the social impact, implement the effects on the planet, the ecological impact, right from the beginning, okay? Because those are the sustainable business models that I have seen in my work, and those are the sustainable business models that I believe will survive in the long run. And here's one famous example. And I don't know if you can do this, but normally I would dedicate a prize to the person who's the fastest in finding out which company I'm talking about. So I just downloaded the vision of this company, and the company says, we want to cultivate a world where all humans live together compassionately and in balance with nature. So very difficult on this slide to find out which company it is. Let me go to the next one. They say we create solutions which enable our users to behave in a way that is good for all people and the planet. We reach massive amounts of people so that we can cultivate positive change on a global scale. Our profits shall be used to restore entire landscapes and enable impoverished communities to live a good life in balance with nature. That sounds amazing. And I hope you typed some names in the chat and you try to find out which company this is. And you might be surprised on the next slide that I tell you that I'm talking about EcoXa. And EcoXa is nothing or is as simple as Google. It's a search engine. But what they do is whenever you type your keywords into the search engine, for example, traveling from Paris to Barcelona, with every search that you do, they make money through advertisements and they plant trees with a considerable amount of their profits. They don't only plant trees, they go to regions, deserted regions in developing countries, they plant trees and they educate people how they can make use of the trees. For example, to harvest the fruits, they could even chop the wood and then reforest the trees that are planted. And so you get this ecological impact because trees, they basically bundle CO2 emissions. And if we would plant millions and billions of trees, we basically solve a lot of the climate change problem. But they also have a social impact because they teach the communities where they plant the trees how to use them and how to make economic use of those trees. And the interesting bit about EcoXa is they have a company structure, and that's perhaps also very important, where the company cannot be sold. The only reason for the company to exist is to plant trees, and they do this through the business model of helping people to use a kind of sustainable search engine. Because if you type in traveling from Paris to Barcelona, you perhaps get train options and other options first before you see the first flight. So this is kind of an ecological assistant, if you like. The interesting bit is when we talk about social entrepreneurship, many people think that those companies, they don't make much money. EcoXa is extremely profitable and makes a lot of money. And this is what I believe is the future. Triple impact, you make a lot of money, but you also have a social and ecological impact. All right, we go to the next slide, and here's my question for you. Do you know triple impact companies like EcoXa? And I would like you to fill out the poll, but also if you know companies, please put them in the chat, and I perhaps learn something about companies that I didn't know before. And I depend on Suzanne to read the results to me.
Yes, I'm looking at them. Well, you would be surprised, but right now we are like around 82% of no's. And now 76. Wow. So yes.
Okay, that's
triple impact is completely new to me. So thank you, Florian. I think our viewers are learning lots of things with you.
Okay, I feel much more relaxed now because this tells me that my course will perhaps contribute to the masters and that you're going to learn something about how to set up a triple impact startup. Okay. I want to give you a few examples of companies that I believe are triple impact companies, companies that are profitable. and companies that are kind of the leading companies whenever somebody talks about social entrepreneurship with triple impact. So the first one I want to talk about is Bcash. The interesting bit about Bcash is Bcash was the first company that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation invested into. You might know that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation normally donates money to NGOs or to researchers that they contribute to a better world. But for Bcash, which was set up as a for-profit company, they changed their strategy and they said, well, to make a big impact, we can actually do an equity investment and become a shareholder of Bcash. So what is Bcash doing? Bcash realized that in Bangladesh, about 85% of the population have a mobile phone, but only 5% have a bank account. And at the time when Bcash was set up, the World Bank basically said that one of the big topics we have to work on in developing countries is what they call financial inclusion. People need to have the opportunity to have a bank account, save money, invest into assets, set up their businesses, etc. And this is the opportunity that Bcash is tackling through a mobile money service. So you have to imagine in Bangladesh, many people, rather poor people, they stem from rural areas, from villages, and they go to urban areas. They go into the big towns where they work. But then they want to send money back to their families in the rural areas, sometimes 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 kilometers far away. And they had to give the money to friends or to use mail. The money gets lost. It's very inefficient. So what Bcash does is they benefit from the fact that almost everyone has a mobile phone. And when you get cash in your factory in an urban area, you can go to a shop, exchange the cash against points on your mobile phone, and you can decide whether you want to save the money, which is much better and protect it on your mobile phone relative to putting your money under a pillow, or you can decide that you send the money somewhere within a second on a mobile phone of one of your family members or one of your friends, who can then again go to a shop and exchange the points against money. At the time when Bcash was set up, it was one of the first of those mobile money transfer services. And now they basically use the mobile phone as much more than a bank account. They also provide insurance and other investment opportunities.
Okay, maybe Florian, before you start this slide, maybe if you can scroll and see if we have a few questions that you would be willing to answer. Let's see if we have some questions. So Andrea is trying to open up the window. We'll take a few questions. Here I can see.
I'm excited now.
Yeah, I'm sure you are, and so am I. Okay, let's see if we can get to see it. So social values are so variable across different countries and even within the country. How is this taken into account? And that's a question from Sushil Kumar.
That's a very good question. And I guess the short answer is yes. If you measure your social impact, it perhaps depends on the region where you are, the country where you are, and it differs. So if we take the example of Bcash, if you install a mobile money transfer service in Germany, nobody would say that there's a huge social impact because everybody has a bank account. So there's not much that you contribute through Bcash other than having efficient mobile money transfer service. In Bangladesh, it's different. If you are in a context where almost nobody has a bank account and you set up this company and then you provide people with the opportunity to have a bank account and transfer their money safely, then you have a big social impact. So yes, it depends on the region where you are, whether you would call this a social impact or not.
Okay, great. So we have another question, which is, well, do you have any examples of huge corporations like Apple, which have or are evolving into triple impact companies?
Yeah, that's also a very good question. So perhaps I should make a disclaimer here. I talk a lot about setting up new businesses and how to integrate the triple impact idea into those new businesses, because I think it's the future. Okay. At the same time, all the work that I do with big corporations today in different customized programs is about, for example, we are a car producer. We know that we won't sell as many cars in 10 years. we know that people who live in big cities in the future, they just want to go from A to B in a sustainable manner. So we have to reinvent our business model. And I guess the point that I'm making is whenever you face times of change, like the automobile industry, that's a big, big chance to go into a triple impact business model developing exercise. And that's exactly what big companies do. So some would take their core business, like Danone. Danone really has a lot to offer when it's about triple impact in their core business. But then you have other corporations, and they use kind of the pressure to develop new business models to implement the triple impact idea. And I guess that's the knowledge that you bring to the table if you go to the job market after your master's and you have taken this course.
Okay, thank you so much, Florian. I think now you can go ahead with your slide.
I try to.
Yeah, well,
okay.
Here it is, dialogue in the dark.
Exactly. Second example is dialogue in the dark. So here we have a company that focuses really on the aspect of social inclusion. Dialogue in the dark is a company that mainly works with blind people. And Dialogue in the Dark basically is a social enterprise that also expanded to China because with the elderly society, it's becoming a big problem that people lose their sight. What do? They basically have different services that people like me, like sighted people, can buy. My favorite is what is called dinner in the dark. So I would go to a restaurant service. I arrive there and it's pitch dark, and I'm guided and I'm served by blind people. And I would take, for example, a 3-course meal in complete darkness. What blind people get through Dialogue in the Dark is meaningful jobs where what might be perceived as a weakness that they can't see is transformed into a strength. They are the only ones that can serve dinners and cook dinners in the dark. But what also happens is that people like myself, I get a better understanding of the world of the blind. I can exchange with them. I feel how I use my senses differently, how food tastes differently, how I hear voices louder and I hear more details because I cannot see. And the important bit is the next time I go to the train station and I see a blind person that walks across the train station, I know how to react and how to help or not help a blind person. So I get sensitized to the world of the blind. So here again, big social impact, integration of blind people into meaningful jobs with good salaries, and I get sensitized as a sighted person to the world of the blind people. And Dialogue in the Dark is 30 years old around the world, makes money, and also gets donations depending on the legal form that they use. Interesting bit, and last bit on Dialogue in the Dark, they also train people who do recruiting. Because unfortunately, we are fooled by our eyes when we recruit people. We should more focus on the skills and what they really can bring to the company, and we focus too much on what our eyes tell us and what our brain does with this information. Okay. I go to the next slide. So to wrap this up, sorry, one back.
Yeah, we can see it.
There should be a table.
Types.
Okay. So to briefly wrap this up, and I think what is important to understand when we talk about social entrepreneurship is companies, they get a little bit hybrid when we talk about triple impact. Yes, they should do commercial exchange, they should sell goods and products, but then the social or the ecological bit gets more prominent. And depending on how prominent it is, you have a different type of social entrepreneurship. So when you look at the first line of this table, we talk about the Red Cross, we talk about Doctors Without Borders, and those people, they really focus on their social or ecological mission, and they don't sell services or products. At the same time, they are very entrepreneurial, and I would call them social entrepreneurs, because imagine a natural catastrophe. Very often, the Doctors Without Borders or the Red Cross, they are the only people who can go there and help. And this is why they get money, and this is why they have been around for the last almost 100 years and finance their activities. Then you have companies like Dialogue in the Dark, and they have a hybrid model. Yes, they sell products or they sell services like the restaurant service, but they also really focus on helping the blind people, and they also receive donations. This is what we call a hybrid financing model. They make revenues, but they also get donations. And then we have companies like EcoXa. They definitely make a lot of money, but they also have very, very strong social and ecological goals that they follow, and the company would not exist without those social and ecological goals. And I would call those three different types of social entrepreneurs, or those three different types of companies, social entrepreneurs. Coming back to the question of big corporations, I think at the moment what they do is they borrow techniques for new business development from social entrepreneurs, and they smoothly shift their business models from something that is still very profit-oriented to something that becomes more and more social and ecologically relevant. Okay, so you might have understood that I'm the person saying a company should make profit, full stop. And at the same time, I care about the social and ecological impact a lot, and it should be integrated into the business model. So I'm not saying that I think companies should receive donations. And I also claim, based on the trends that we talked about and the few examples that I gave, that there is true business reasons to develop your social and ecological impact. Number one is very simple, it's reputation. Those Fridays for Future kids, but perhaps also my generation, we do value and we do pay more for products that have this ecological/social impact reputation. The next reason is about financing and investments. And especially for startups, I can tell you, if you look at the surveys on impact investing, so impact investing is a type of investment where you want to have a financial return, but you also want to see a return on social and or ecological goals. Impact investing is exponentially growing, and the experiences that I make with tech startups here in Berlin is investors do care about the social and ecological impact. And if you can measure it and if you communicate it well, you have an advantage on the market where you compete for investments. Next business reason is compliance with new law and new regulation. I think we live in times where the standard setters and the regulators, they have understood that they have to pass laws and they have to force companies sometimes, for example, to reduce their emissions. One example in the European Union is the legislation on the CO2 emissions from passenger cars that have to be reduced, that put car producers a bit into trouble because now they have a maximal amount of CO2 emissions for their fleet. And this definitely changes their business practice towards becoming more sustainable. And you have to have this on the radar as a pure business reason to create this impact. And the last bit, and this is especially when we talk about the Fridays for Future generation, if you want to hire people in the future, if you want to retain people in the future, not have a high fluctuation, it's very important that you tell people or that you can show to people that they have purpose in their work. Okay, purpose is a new buzzword. In other words, that they create a social and ecological impact with their work and that they can actually contribute. If not, they might not stay and go to a different company. And you know that hiring and retaining people is extremely costly, so when they leave, there's a huge cost factor involved. All right, those are some of the business reasons. I don't want to tell you my whole course before the masters, and I'm happy to see if we have more questions that I can answer.
Well, we have Nicholas, who it isn't a question, but he was talking about Norwegian Airlines, who apparently have a strong partnership with UNICEF. Have you ever heard about this, Florian?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and that's something that comes much later in the course, but to generally talk about this, partnerships are extremely important to work on social and ecological impact. So airlines, they might partner with UNICEF because airlines, they get attacked because of the emissions. Flying is one of the worst things that you can do to the planet, so they partner. In the example of EcoXa, they basically partner with Microsoft. They use the Bing search engine, and Microsoft gets something from the reputation from EcoXa. So partnerships is really a powerful tool if you want to increase your impact, especially as a corporation, an existing one.
Okay, thank you for it. Yep. Okay, and there's one last question, but I think, I mean, you talked about it already in your previous slide because the question arrived before your slide. Is there a way these companies are making money from their social impact projects, or do the companies have their social impact project as a side project? That's a question from Joel.
Yeah, so the ideal way would be to integrate the social and ecological impact into your business model, so it's not a side project. Today, many corporations, they still create side projects, and then they report on them in their CSR reports or sustainability reports because they don't manage to integrate it into their business model. I guess what I claim with this little teaser for my course is, in the future, you have to integrate the social and ecological impact into your business model, and you need to find a good business reason why you do that. Either you do it because you can ask for a higher price of your product, or you can retain the talent that you need, or you have to comply with the law. All the reasons that I mentioned will, in my opinion, force companies in the future to implement this triple impact idea into their business models.
Okay, we have just one last little question. Well, it's more like a reflection coming from Paula. Said, with respect to the deforestation and Amazon, can some companies help to prevent this? Well, yeah, we would all love to, wouldn't we, Florian?
I think so, and we shouldn't forget the power of the consumer. You know, you can decide what you buy, and this will definitely hurt the profit and loss statements of companies that don't create any impact. And my claim is, with the generation of the future, the Fridays for Future generation, we see a lot of consumers that vote for companies with their purchase decisions.
Okay, well, Florian, that's about it for the questions. Do you want to finish wrapping up?
Yeah, I guess I quickly wrap up on the last slide. So what I wanted to show you as a little teaser is future trends, and I just picked some of them that I believe will force companies to go into the direction of triple impact business development. And there is different techniques of how we can do this, and this is what I basically bring to the table in my course. And why should you do this today? Well, I think that there's very good business reasons that I mentioned to focus on triple impact, because you can make more money with your service or product, you can recruit better talents, or you just do some kind of risk management that you are protected when new law or regulation arrives on the market. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. I look forward to all the people I will see in the Masters and in my course. Take care, and thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Florian. This was a really inspiring presentation, and I hope it'll give some good ideas to our viewers who are maybe wanting to know more about your course, because this is only a sample class. And of course, you get the full information and full detail during our master and certificate. So maybe some of you are saying, yes, now I really would like to apply for this master, where you can hear Florian giving us so much detail about social entrepreneurship. So can I? Well, here are the main criteria on this slide. You should be having 5 years of professional experience. You, of course, have to be proficient in English, since the whole course is in English. For our master, you should count 20 hours on average per week of work, because of course it's a master. It's a HEC Paris Master. Now you know our ranking that I presented previously. So yes, there is a lot to learn, and our professors want you to be sure that you learn properly. So you need to work 20 hours per week. And of course, last but not least, you must have an entrepreneurship and innovation spirit mindset. So there are different options if you are looking into a master. The first one, of course, is applying immediately to our master. The cost is on this slide. You have, of course, the possibility of paying in several installments, but maybe it's not yet the right time for you. Maybe you do not have enough years of professional experience. You haven't found your funds, or maybe you wouldn't find those 20 hours available per week. So in this case, why not start by our certificate, which is self-paced, flexible, and then later move on to our master. And maybe some of you are also hesitant. Should I go into the certificate? What is the content of this master? Well, why not take a look at our MOOCs and specializations that are there for an available, very reasonable price? And they are all available on the Coursera platform. So that can give you also a good idea about the quality of our courses and our great professors who are there to teach you so many subjects around entrepreneurship and innovation. So that's it for us. Thank you so much, viewers, to be still there and watching us. For those who've started already an application for our master, well, the next jury date is on September 5th. So you still have a few days to finish your application. It is still possible. And for those who are hesitant and wanting to start a new application for our master, our next cohort is starting on December 2nd. You have my name, you have my email and telephone. Do not hesitate to contact us if you wish to have more information on this presentation, or if you need to have any information on our master. So, well, thank you, Andrea, my tech boy, for helping us for this webinar to make it happen between Paris and Berlin. Of course, thank you, Florian, for your time and this wonderful presentation, which really was interesting. And thank you so much, Florian. I enjoyed my time. And viewers from all around the planet, thank you for being there and for watching us. And of course, this webinar will be available soon in a few hours on YouTube. So for those who have missed it or missed part of it, you'll be able to view it or view it again on YouTube. Well, Florian, maybe would you like to conclude this webinar with a few words?
Yeah, well, thank you to the viewers. I really hope to see some of you in the Masters. I enjoy interacting with the students during the whole Masters program. It's always really nice that you basically work online in different time zones, people from different nationalities. There's so much to learn and so much that you can take away apart from the webinars while interacting. I hope to see some of you. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Bye-bye from Berlin.
Bye-bye from Paris.